Good morning. How are ya? Nana's doing pretty good. It's kind of a chilly day today here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and we have lots of rain and snow and icky stuff outside, but it's warm in here, and God is good. So this morning I thought I would read a story called Hooray for Bubba Berenstein. Baba. I don't think that's his real name. I think we're going to figure it out with the story, but and I'm going to try and read as much of it as possible, but I may only get half and then I'll have to read you the other half later on. So good morning, Isaiah and Seth and Olivia and Gabriel, and good morning to Elijah and Thad and Marie and Anna and Miss Eden. Hope you guys are having a great day. Nana loves you so much. Oh, I miss you so much. So here we go. First chapter, Baba breaks the rules. Last year when David Berenstein was in third grade, there'd been 3 other boys named David in his class. There was David Katz and David Rodriguez and David Shapiro. And David Berenstein didn't like that one little bit. It was much too confusing. Then one day he was reading a book called Arabian Nights. He discovered a wonderful name, Ali Baba. There were no other Ali Babas in his class, and as far as David Berenstein knew, there were no other Ali Babas in his school. It was the perfect new name for a boy who wanted to be different. David Berenstein had told his parents, his teacher, and his classmates to call him Ali Baba. His teacher had been surprised by this name changing in the midst of the school year. However, there was no rule against it, and so with time, she did. Now, Baba Berenstein was 9 years, 4 months, and 7 days old. His mother said he was old enough to act his age and accept the name he'd been given when he was born. That was easy for her to say. She didn't sit in a 4th grade classroom from Monday to Friday and hear other people being called her name over and over again. And even though David Katz had moved during the summer, there were still 4 Davids in the class. Now there was a new boy named David Lee who had transferred from another school. So Baba Berenstein was determined that if he ever changed schools, he would have his parents investigate the names of his new classmates first, and in the meantime, he would continue to use his name Baba. It made him feel important, and it made him feel special, and he liked that. On Friday morning in September, that Baba Berenstein was 9 years, 4 months, and 11 days old. His 4th grade class was scheduled to take a trip to the public library. Mrs. Melrose had told the students about the library visit several times during the week, and each time she concluded her comments with the words, "Be sure to bring your library card to school with you on Friday." She wanted each of them to borrow a biography for their first report. A biography, she explained, was the story of someone's life. Baba hoped that someday someone would write a book about the story of his life. Baba always carried his library card in the same plastic case that held his monthly bus pass and an emergency card with the telephone numbers of his father's office on it. So when he got on the bus to go to school that Friday morning, it never occurred to him that he had a problem. But as the bus neared the school, he put his hand in his back pocket and removed the little plastic case. He admired his green bus pass and wondered what color he would get next month. Perhaps October would be red. Then Baba flipped open the different compartments in the case and looked for his library card. It wasn't there. How could he have lost it? "Hey, come on," Natalie called Baba as she was getting off the bus. "This is our stop." Natalie was a 2nd grader who lived on the same street as Baba. On the bus to school each day, she always sat or stood just as close to Baba as she could. Usually, she just stared at him. Baba knew that she had a crush on him because a couple of the girls in Natalie's class had told him so. He generally preferred to ignore her, but he often watched her out of the corner of his eye. She was the first girl who'd liked him. Baba stuffed the plastic case back into his pocket and adjusted his backpack as he got off the bus. Where could his library card be? "I love Friday," said Natalie as the 2 of them walked in the direction of the school. Baba didn't answer. He was too busy trying to figure out the location of his missing library card. He was sure he hadn't lost it. He remembered going to the library and checking out a book quite recently, and suddenly Baba realized what had happened. The librarian had stuck his card in the pocket of the book he had borrowed that day. The card was still in the pocket, and the book was on the floor under his bed at home. "Don't you like Fridays?" asked Natalie. When Ali Baba didn't respond, she asked, "Don't you like to talk to me? It's not my fault that I'm not as old as you are." "I don't care how old you are," said Ali Baba. "I have a problem." He looked at the small girl walking beside him. "Do you have a library card?" he asked her. "Sure," said Natalie, nodding her head. "I got it when I was in the first grade." "Would you let me borrow it?" he asked. Natalie looked less certain. The librarian said, "Never, ever, 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 ever let anyone else use your card, because we have to pay if the book gets lost." She looked at Ali Baba. "But if you cross your heart and hope to die that you'll return all books on time, I'll let you use my card." "Super," said Ali Baba, smiling at Natalie with relief. Who would have guessed that it would be so useful to have a second-grade girl with a crush on him? "My class is going to the library this morning, and Miss Melrose will have a fit if she finds out I left my library card at home." "Oh," said Natalie, as they reached the entrance of the school. "My card is at home, too. I thought you wanted to use it this afternoon when school was over." "Well, that's no help," grumbled Ali Baba. "Goodbye," Natalie said, waving to Ali Baba as they parted. Ali Baba was too preoccupied about his library card to respond. Practically the first thing that Mrs. Melrose said to the class was, "Did everyone here bring their library card?" And Ali Baba knew he should raise his hand and tell her he didn't have his card, but the way the teacher worded the question kept him from responding yes. He had his library card at home. At home. If she had said, "Do all of you have your library cards here with you right this minute?" then he would have had to admit that he didn't have it. "Good," said Mrs. Melrose, beaming at her students, "that everyone can borrow a book at the public library." Miss Melrose was the prettiest teacher Ali Baba had ever had. She looked as if she should be on TV and not teaching it at Public School 35. In a way, Ali Baba thought that he felt the same way about Miss Melrose that Natalie felt about him. He liked to sit in class and watch her. And whenever the teacher smiled, he felt like smiling too. So how could he possibly tell her that something now would bring a frown to her face? Ali Baba looked around the classroom and he wondered who would share their card with him. If only Roger Zucker was in his class this year, he would have agreed in a second because he was Ali Baba's best friend. Tony Mancuso sat with Ali Baba at lunch every day. He might have let him use his card, except Tony had been absent from school the day before, and looking around for him now, Ali Baba saw that Tony was still absent. There's no time to talk with anyone because Miss Melrose was rushing through the morning's routine. The students stood and recited the Pledge of Allegiance, and they took their Friday morning spelling quiz. Then Annabelle Singer's mom was at the classroom door. She was the class mother who was going to accompany the fourth graders when they went to the library. Ali Baba got an idea. While all the other students were putting their notebooks away, he went up to Miss Melrose and asked permission to go to the office. "I have to phone my mother," he said. "Is there a problem?" Miss Melrose asked. "Oh, it's something personal," he said. "All right, but hurry right back." Ali Baba rushed down the hall to the front office, and he told Miss Green, the secretary, that he didn't make a call home. Luckily, no one else was waiting to use the phone, and sometimes there was a whole line of students who'd forgotten their lunches or consent slips or money for special things. Ali Baba was going to ask his mother to meet him at the library and to bring his card. It was a good plan, except that no one answered the telephone. He counted 12 rings, and although he knew his mother always answered it by the third, even when she was sitting right next to the telephone, she always waited until the third ring to pick it up. He thought of calling his grandparents, but he knew that even if they were home, it was too much to expect them to travel up to his apartment and find his library card and then bring it to the library. His father wouldn't want to do it either, so Ali Baba went back to the classroom, and the students were all lined up and waiting for him. "You're sure everything is all right?" asked the teacher. Ali Baba was going to tell her that he had left his card at home, but he was afraid she would ask him why he hadn't told her earlier, and he didn't know what he would answer, so he just nodded his head as he put his jacket on and got in the end of the line. He didn't have a partner, but he was too busy thinking about his library card to care. The public library was 10 blocks from the school, and Ali Baba's home was 10 blocks from the library. The library was exactly in the middle between his house and the school. It was because he lived 20 blocks from school, which was a full mile, that he got the student bus pass from the city every month. and as students walked toward the library, Ali Baba had another idea. He would slip away from class and go home. Then he could get his card and meet the class at the library. Oh boy, I don't think that's a good idea, do you? As the students walked toward the library, Ali Baba had another idea. Then he could get his library card and meet the class at the library. A whole class full of students walking down the street moved more slowly than he could on his own. If he hurried, he could meet the class at the library and no one would even know that he had been gone. Luckily, Ali Baba was at the end of the line of students, and luckily, too, he didn't have a partner, so it was quite easy to duck into a doorway as the students turned a corner. He waited until they were halfway up the next street before he dashed out of his hiding place. Then Ali Baba set off at a run. It was a lovely autumn day, and he felt good as he ran along the streets to his home. At some corners, he had to wait for the traffic lights to turn green before he could cross. He lived in the city, right? Yeah. But at other corners, he didn't have to break his stride at all. It was fun running. Elijah loves to run. You guys all run. You run so good. If he didn't have a heavy backpack, he could run to and from school every day, he thought. By the time he reached his house, Ali Baba was winded, and he stood at the elevator. "My goodness, why aren't you in school?" asked one of the older women who lived in the building. Ali Baba wasn't sure what he would have answered, but he was still trying to catch his breath, and so no words came out. And the woman walked away without the answer. Ali Baba had his own key. It was taped to a piece of cardboard and kept inside the plastic folder with his bus pass, and it was there for an emergency, and Ali Baba finally had an emergency. Well, here's the first picture. He rarely had an opportunity to use his key, so he was pleased to have this chance to let himself into the apartment. "Mom," he called out, just in case his mother had returned home, but there was no answer. He ran to his bedroom and looked under his bed, and surely enough, there was his library book right where he'd left it. And sure enough, inside the pocket of the book was his card. Ali Baba glanced at the clock in his room as he rushed out. It was only 10:20. His class had left the school building just before 10 o'clock. They were scheduled to be at the library at 10:30, so if he ran to the library as quickly as he ran to his house, he would make it there without a problem. He had to waste a whole minute waiting for the elevator. When it arrived, fat Mr. Salmon, who had lived on the floor above, was in it. They two looked at each other, but they didn't exchange any words. Once outside of the building, Ali Baba set off at a run. He thought he was ask his father how one went about entering the New York City Marathon. Without this experience behind him, he could easily do it. Ali Baba had hoped he would arrive at the library at the same time as his class, but when he reached the entrance of the public library, there was no sign of his classmates. He was either too early or too late. He looked at his watch and saw it was 25 minutes to 11. He was late. By now, Miss Melrose and the fourth graders were upstairs in the children's room. He wondered if anyone else had noticed that he was missing. He could tiptoe inside and sit in the back. Or else he could wait in the hallway to the children's room, and when everybody got up to look at the books, he would join him then. He decided that's probably what he should do. Ali Baba climbed up the steps to the library door and tried to open it. It was locked. A sign on the door said the library was closed until noon. That meant that his class had arrived. Someone had opened the door especially for them. If he rang the doorbell to the library, it would call attention to his lateness. Worse, Miss Melrose would know that he'd left the class when they were walking to the library. Ali Baba sat down on the top step and tried to think what to do. He could wait until his class had left the library and join them then. He was sure that by that time Miss Melrose would realize he was missing, and of course he wouldn't have a book to discuss in class that afternoon. That was a big problem. A big brown United Parcel truck pulled up in front of the library, and Ali Baba watched as the driver got out of his seat. Ali Baba watched as the driver rummaged around in the back of the truck. That was a great job. He thought, driving all around the city and bringing packages to people. The driver stepped out of the truck and set a large carton on the ground. He put a second smaller carton on top of it. "Do you need help?" Ali Baba asked. "I have 2 packages to deliver," said the man. Ali Baba ran down the steps and picked up the smaller one. "Let me help you." The man picked up the big one and followed him up to the library steps and pushed the button. "What are you doing here?" asked the driver as they waited for someone to answer the door. "Shouldn't you be in school?" "My class is visiting the library," Ali Baba explained, "and I'm going to have to stop right here And we're going to pick it up tomorrow and find out what happened with Alibaba at the library. Nana loves you guys and Papa loves you guys, and we pray for you every day. Have a great day. Bye.